Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Dear Christiano. I've often made my life sound better than it really was. Now, I think growing up, were someone who had no friends, who felt that they weren't really interesting or felt unlovable. I had a childhood where I invented details to seem interesting and worth choosing. Now, because I had no friends for such a long time, I went through this period of really trying to fit in, trying to become something more than what I was because I didn't believe that I was worthy or that I was lovable, or that there was anything interesting about me. And I remember when I finally kind of started to come out of the closet, I started to go down to Sydney, to the gay clubs, and nobody knew me at all. I had no reference of this old version of me, which was basically what I would call to myself, felt like I was a massive loser, right? No friends, bullied for years and years and years, and just struggled in so many different areas socially to then going down to these kinds of places where no one knows you. This was before social media was around and people could look you up or anything like that. People could only understand what you shared. And I just remember that I would add things to embellish bits about myself that made me sound more interesting because I thought that the facts were more important than, say, the connection or the reality because I didn't know about all of those things, right? When you have no friends, we've not had that experience getting to know people. You don't really understand what's important. You think that these things are the most important things because when you watch TV or movies, you're like, oh, well, that person's so cool and so interesting. And you think that's kind of what you need to be. When I say you think, I'm referencing I think that way. So, with a childhood with no friends, I invented details to really seem interesting and actually worth choosing a friendship. So I remember, I told people because I'm part Italian, but really we don't have much Italian understanding back with because of a whole different scandal, which I'm not going to get into in my family because it's not relevant to the situation. So we tell people I'm part Italian and part Hawaiian. Now, the Hawaiian part, completely made up because never been to Hawaii, have no Hawaiian heritage. But to me, it sounded something I could tell people that would be interesting. Oh, wow. Like, I've never met someone who's got a Hawaiian background from, or it's such a cool place. Tell me about that, whatever it is, right? And so I invented things that sounded cool to make me interesting. I also told them I did different things for work and study and this and that. And so it was always just like some sort of detail. Like, I think I told people that like I was an artist when in fact I was just working in the call center or I was working at a supermarket, right? As a checkout manager. But, to me, those sounded basic and boring. And why would someone want to be friends with someone who just works at Coles, a supermarket, right? Which is a big supermarket chain in Australia. So I changed that. I changed that I was studying when I wasn't studying. I said I was studying to be a real estate agent. All of these little things that seemingly didn't really alter or affect like a friendship or connection because actually what you do and, what you study don't have a whole lot of weight in a relationship unless you can use it to connect. Like I'm meeting other people who are real estate agents or I'm meeting other artists, right? So for me, I would share information like that because I just thought that that was a way that people could see me that way. Now, as a queer person and someone who struggled internally with their own acceptance of who they are, I know it's quite a common thing to get into this realm of perfectionism and that can come at it in a few different ways. You can be perfectionism, meaning I'm going to be the perfect son, I'm going to be the perfect student, I'm going to be the perfect sports person. And you work really hard to put yourself out there in ways that'll make you seem like that you can achieve and achieve and achieve and achieve. And so I had that complex for a lot of my life. Like I really performed and performed and performed perfectionism. And so again, in these situations where I'm meeting new people and trying to build friendships because I've never built them before, again, I use perfectionism as a way of like being the perfect person in a way, where I didn't have all this baggage. I didn't have all this insecurities. I didn't have all this stuff weighing on me saying, hey, look, you think you're so good because of all these facts. When in fact, there's still the trauma and the stuff you haven't yet dealt with laying underneath the surface. And when you go out and you meet people and especially when you go out partying, those things come out as well. right? So you can perform perfectionism in a way of like trying to show people a perfect version of you to try to be relatable, to try to build connection. But ultimately, what happens is people don't get to know the real me. And so whenever people liked me or accepted me or wanted to be friends with me, I didn't actually ever really feel at my core that they actually knew me or wanted to get to know me because I gave them a version of who I thought they wanted to be. And I did this throughout so much of my life. Now, when it comes to, trying to get into the world of dating and relationships, trying to find a partner, for years and years and years and years, no one wanted to date me. No one found me attractive. Or when I say it like that, no one I was interested in found me attractive. No one who was interested in me found me interesting. So I would also say things to other people around, oh, how come someone like you hasn't found someone? I'm not looking at the moment. I'm just kind of focusing on myself and my life and my friendships and all these other things, right? Because the truth is saying that sounds safer than admitting that I really truly feared that nobody would ever love me. The insecurities of not being good enough or being worthy enough or being seen, heard, and understood for who I am wasn't showing up. Now, I was living in a place like Sydney, which is a big, mecca for LGBT people, right? So it wasn't like, I was in a small town, which, when I was living on the Central Coast back then, there was not many people who were open. And obviously, I was still coming to terms with it. So knowing anyone in the gay scene up there wasn't something that I could get to know. And this is again before that when you have like say Grind or those kinds of apps, which just you can pick someone near you, right? There was some online forumy things, but it was definitely not something that I was attuned to or understanding of as well, especially as I was trying to come to terms fully with myself. So again, struggling with having people see me that way. Again, I would add on more information about who I was when I would go on the odd date here and there. And again, I would still find that I felt unlovable, unworthy, and all that stuff that I was pushing and pretending and masking and trying to embellish about my life to make other people see me as interesting and want to maybe continue dating me. The truth comes out, I guess. So energetic connections are real. And so when you're coming off inauthentic or you're adding on stuff that's not true, as much as people may not know that you're telling a lie, I think they can feel that something feels a bit off here. And when you get that feeling that something feels off, it automatically maybe puts you, a guard up. And then you might say, look, this doesn't feel right. I'm not going to go there. Rightly so. I've been in situations on the other side of that where I've met people and I'm like, I don't think this person is betraying themselves honestly. And again, some of the things may be small and minuscule in the sense of like, they don't really matter about who you are. And maybe you are showing yourself in other ways, but you're trying to use these things as a connection, as a bridge builder, right? Because you want people to see you in a certain light. Again, that's that image of perfectionism that you're trying to uphold out there. And again, you'll try your best to perform that way and to be that way. But ultimately, at the core of it, you know that you're not being real. You know that you're not being authentic. And you also know that when you do connect with someone from that place, it can feel difficult to really feel like they know you or see you or understand you. And so what you're ultimately looking for sometimes gets further away because people see a part of you that they may have connected to over here because of this. Maybe it's relatable to them, but it's actually not the truth. And so then it's difficult to go back to those people and say, hey, look, I was making all of this stuff up over here. None of that's true. This is who I am. So for a long time, I lived a bit of a lie in the sense of who I was with those facts. Now, people got to know me outside of that, and so those facts didn't matter, and people realized that I wasn't this or that, or however it came about. Ultimately, didn't really affect many things, but it affected me for a long time because again, I was pretending to be something that I wasn't. I was embellishing facts about myself or parts of my life to sound more interesting to get people to see me. Now, there's the part, the previous episode I recorded was around living in the fantasy world of like, this is how I want my life to be and envisioning and dreaming it. But then there's also this part, which is what we're talking about today, is where I'm actually embellishing or changing things about who I am that aren't even real to sound more interesting. And so I did that with trying to build friendships. I did that with trying to date. And I also did that in my coaching business earlier on. I presented that my business was super successful because I really, really wanted it to be there. I could dream it and envision it, like the fantasy of what I wanted it to be. And so when I was showing up online and I was posting about it or talking about things, again, I would put the embellishment on there. If I had 5 clients, I would say I have 15 clients, because again, I thought that people seeing me as a successful coach meant that they would want to come more likely for me to help them. And I was really keen on wanting to help people that are presenting more successfully than I was. And then again, ultimately, what I think happened is in that presentation of success, but living a bit of inauthenticity with actual reality, energetically people can feel when you're being real or not. And sometimes people don't know why they feel a certain way to it. And maybe that's where it was. But the more and more I just shed some of those layers of insecurities and the perfectionism stuff, which, I'm still working through because it's a process. It doesn't just go away. And now these days I'm working more on being authentic and showing up. And that's why this podcast kind of evolved into Dear Christiano. It's about me actually speaking about these kinds of topics and the truth and the reality of it and the vulnerability of it because, it's not easy for someone who's out there trying to say, oh, I want to help these people. But I admit that, there was a part of me that had been looking for acceptance, looking for connection, looking for something, whether that was in friendship or in dating or in finding clients. And so really what I was trying to do, and again, our brains are such technical things where they think that they're doing something really good for you. I was trying to turn my insecurity into confidence, my struggle into choice, and actual shame into performance. But the problem is that the cost is that people approved of an edited version, so their approval actually never truly reached me. And then the truth is that I had to start understanding why I did it and how it doesn't actually remove my responsibility. And so today, what I'm doing is working hard to be practicing letting people see the unfinished, the imperfect, the honest version of me, which is why, again, this podcast is around because I don't care so much anymore about needing someone to see me as this way because I think I've evolved in a way where I have got success in this area, in this area, and this area and success for what I see is different to what I guess I was expecting I would see success as. Now, of course, when you're out there and you've gone through all of these big events with the Tony Robbinses and the Brendan Burchards and all of the gurus out there, there's so many of them, right? We all probably know someone who does these massive events and they just like look up to someone there. And you think, well, I thought that I had to get that in order for me to be successful. And if I was just running a small business where I was helping only a couple of people, then I was a failure. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't, reaching my potential. I wasn't supporting it. What am I doing with my life? And so again, I embellished some things to make myself more successful so that I could attract people. And definitely did work. I got people because they saw me as someone who was successful. But ultimately, the result that they got wasn't because I was successful. It's because I was good at what I did. And so ultimately I had to stop looking at the result of what I was hoping for or wanting for to be my ideal destination or vision of what success is. I had to actually look and go, you know what? I'm putting in the effort. I am getting results for people. I am changing my life around. I'm doing all these things. And all of that is successful. I mean, back before I started my coaching business, I was working corporate, doing, 50, 80, 100 hours a week sometimes, working from home, stuck in COVID, dealing with that in really unhealthy ways, drinking a lot, taking drugs, and struggling internally, but pretending to everyone else that I was doing well and I was perfect because that's what I thought I had to do. And so as much as I worked a lot and overcome that and got through that and got sober and cleaned up and realized I didn't want to do this, I moved here. There was still some patterns of behavior that I was holding on to. And they've been following me from that young kid who was bullied, who struggled with his own self-worth or thinking that he was lovable or that anyone would actually ever like him in any way, friendship, dating, clients, whatever you want to look at long term. I had that belief and I had to look at myself, especially a lot over this period where I took a break and go, hang on, like, who are you performing for? That's why when I stopped posting, the first little month, I was like so anxious about, oh, when am I going to come back to it? Oh, people are going to think that, oh, what are people going to think? I'm gone and I'm a failure and I've stopped and I've given up and all these things. I had to work through, like, does it matter what other people think? It only matters what you think, and you will attract the right people by being yourself. So again, me doing this podcast and talking about these topics is a way for me to get things off my chest, to talk truthfully and honestly about who I am and share the stuff that I find interesting that I think is also probably stuff that other people would deal with. Like, I don't see other people talking about these things, that they're pretending to be something in order for approval and acceptance. Now, I'm sure it has been spoken about and it probably is in different ways, but I don't listen to everything. And I guess if I can't find someone like me talking about it, I need to be that person talking about it as well. And so when I reflected back to you, where are you improving the story because you feared that the truth isn't enough? What part of your life are you embellishing or adding a bit of glitter on it because you think that people will like you because of it? And what's the cost of that? Have you actually received the result of what you were looking for? Or do you feel a little bit like me, where their approval never really reached you because they were approving an edited version? So when you can let go of that baggage, let go of that need, and again, it's a work in progress. I have to catch myself these days. There are sometimes when I'm going to go do my autopilot, which is to say it, especially if I'm meeting a new person or, and especially when I'm meeting a new person that I find I would like, I have some reason, oh, this person's interesting or cool. Who I am, my life is more important than the facts, but the facts are still good. And it's about you again, instead of feeling insecure about your facts, being confident about that. Like, I have lived a full life. I'm 40 years old. I've gone through a lot of different shifts and changes. I haven't been afraid to make change. I've shifted my life around more than many people would ever dare to do. Most people go out there, they finish their degree, they get into the work and they stick to it. And I've had people who hate their jobs, but they're stuck there because it's like comfortable in the sense of it gave them so much money and that. And I was in that position when I stayed there for a little while, but I finally ultimately went away from worrying about that stuff and started creating my own life. Has it been perfect these past 5 years? No, but life isn't perfect. But ultimately, I'm happy because I have more time, more freedom, more energy. And also I have a partner and we had businesses together and we do things. And so life is good in that regard. Of course I have struggles, like when some of the businesses aren't performing as well as I'd like them to, or you have a lot of all these expenses that you didn't understand. What could you do? You have to accept it and move forward and continue to do it. And so again, me doing this podcast is a step in the direction of me speaking my most authentic voice and putting it out there. So hopefully someone out there who is going through something just like me or similar to me can get it, can understand it, and maybe, just maybe, will spark, is this working for me? I don't necessarily say you need to follow my values or follow my position in it again, because it's a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. I no longer need to act or pretend that everything's perfect. I'm good. I struggle sometimes. I have my ups, I have my downs. My relationship's good, but it also has its struggles. I don't want to pretend that everything's good anymore. I'm not living this perfectionism lifestyle anymore. It's just not for me. And I'm giving up on that. And so here I am announcing that and sharing it. I'm being vulnerable. I'm sweating under this here with air conditioning on because my blood is saying, look, this is not normal for you to share all this stuff with so many people. But hey, I'm doing it because it feels aligned with who I am. So I've perfected the stories. I've improved them over the years because I didn't actually believe that the truth was enough. But the truth is that the real work that I am doing right now is learning that I am. And those stories, they can remain stories. Just like the fantasies, I have to learn to let them go. And I'm doing that one day at a time. And I want to end with this part here. I was never trying to deceive people. I was never trying to con people. I was never trying to make people, you know, I guess in some regards, I was trying to make people seem, in a certain way. I was actually more trying to become someone I believed that they might choose, that they might like, that they might love. And ultimately, let me tell you this, the only time that people did choose me, they did like me, they did love me, and it felt real, was when I was fully myself, when I stopped the elaborations, I stopped the embellishments. And so maybe, just maybe, you're enough. Maybe, just maybe, you are worthy. Maybe, just maybe, being real and authentic is all you ever needed to be.